Yeah, Jimmy Dean, or 50s, that's when it was. Anyway, yeah, East of Eden, that's where this term comes from, is it's the land of wandering, okay? And so, anyway, he's out there in the land of Nod doing his wandering thing. In verse 17?
And Cain knew his wife.
And what does new mean? Don't say it. Okay, intimacy. All right, go ahead.
And bore Enoch, and he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch.
Okay, so, yes.
Who was his wife?
Okay, you know, this is one of the things that, have you seen The Wind? What is the movie about that evolution? It was done with Spencer Tracy, and it was called Inherit the Wind. And, you know, the Christians won this legal case. Okay, I want you to know that. They lost in the court of public opinion, but the Christians won this legal case that led to evolution. Now, during the movie, Spencer Tracy makes the Christian lawyer look like a complete idiot. Of course, it's typical Hollywood. This is when Hollywood really started to go anti-Christian. And so here we have in this movie at the beginning, they're all singing these songs and they're acting real, you know, typical. I would say that there's a lot of Christians that are like this still in, you know, the Deep South, and they're bitter Christians. Instead of, you know, you go into this church, you don't have all this bitterness towards We're bitter towards sin, but we're not bitter about it. It's just the way that the people marching down the street and they're doing this and they're singing these songs about Jesus real arrogantly, you know. But the whole movie was like this to make Christians look like the bad guys, okay? They got to the court trial and they put the guy on trial, and that was one of the questions they asked. Yeah. Where did he get his wife? And he goes, you know, and it just made him look stupid. Okay, real quickly, let's go to 5 verse 4. Go ahead, 5 verse 4. Wait a minute, 5 verse 3 and 4. Go ahead.
When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his own likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth.
Okay.
Then the days of Adam, after he became the father of Seth, were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters.
Okay, and then what does it say here? 800 years, he lived to be 930 years old, and then he died, right? Okay, from 130 years old to 930 years old, how many sons and daughters could he have? Lots. Lots and lots and lots, okay? Now, once they start having children, how many other children are they going to have? Lots and lots and lots. I mean, somebody did the statistics, and they figured out that you could be up to the time of the flood, from creation to the time of the flood, as many people as there are on the earth right now. And most of the people died just before the flood. If you look at the account, it was the year 2006, I believe. I've got it written in my other Bible. I went through and counted it all up one time. But the flood, you know, Adam would have died just 1,000 years earlier. And most of the names that you read in here died right at the flood. Methuselah died at the flood, right? 777 years old, and then the flood came. And Noah was alive at the flood. Noah was alive when Abraham was alive. But you just don't think that way. Yeah, if you put it all out in a pie chart, not a pie chart, one of those graph charts, it's amazing to see how long these people lived and the overlap that they had. So it is not a problem where he got his wife, because there was no prohibition until when? Intermarrying. When was it there a prohibition between intermarrying with brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and all that? It was at the time of Moses. Before that, there was no such prohibition. One of the things that it just torques my jaws so badly is when people do analysis of Genesis, and then they say, the Levitical law says that they shouldn't have done this. The Levitical law came after the time of Genesis, right? They are applying something to these people. I read that. R.C. Sproul is famous for this. Maybe not him personally, but the people that write in his Table Talk magazine. They say, well, the Levirate law says, you know, it doesn't apply. The Levirate law, or the Levitical law, came in after the flood and after Abraham and after, you know, at the time of Moses.
So Adam and Eve just kept having children.
I'm sure they had a lot of them.
And then there was intermarriage. There had to be intermarriage.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I say these laws didn't come about. Even Abraham married who?
half-sister.
His half-sister. And nobody ever said, you know, as a matter of fact, when he talked to the people, Abimelech, he said, this is my sister. He didn't even say this is my half-sister. He says, this is my sister. Nobody questioned it. It wasn't like there was anything wrong with it.
How would they have populated the world?
Right, right. It's not a problem. If you think it through, it is not a problem.
Well, it wasn't a problem.
What? Twisted scripture what?
What?
You twisted what?
Oh, I was just going to say, the twist, in here, the twisted scripture is saying, they're saying that's how the Mormons get the
Polygamy.
polygamy thingy-dooey.
Well, as I said last week, you know what? I don't see anything in the Bible that really prohibits polygamy. I just don't see it. America prohibits polygamy. And what is it? It's either deacons or pastors, in 1 Timothy chapter 3 says, yeah, they must be the husband of one wife. But Paul never says you can't have more than one wife. And throughout the whole Bible, there are more than one wife in many, many circumstances. So
That was also the downfall, though, right, of Solomon, all these different wives.
yeah, but he did a lot of other things. Every single thing that it says in Deuteronomy for a king not to do, he did. Don't have many horses, don't go back to Egypt for this, don't do that, don't acquire large amounts of gold and silver. You know, to throw in the women thing and disregard all the others is really dishonest to the purpose of what God was saying when he disobeyed everything that a king wasn't supposed to do.
Wasn't his wives
Yeah, led his heart astray from the Lord.
Right.
Right, absolutely. But how many other people had multiple wives and they weren't chastised for it? Most of them, not all of them, but most of them had problems because of it, but not all of them. You know, there was bitterness, there was infighting, but, you know, I'm not making a defense for polygamy. I'm just saying that I don't see in the Bible the argument against it. I just don't see it. I mean, Old and New Testament, I don't see it. I don't think it's right, personally, right? And I also think that because we're in America, you know, that is one of the laws of the land. No polygamy, and therefore we don't have it. But if somebody, here's a totally off the main subject, but on the same subject. A guy went to, he was a missionary in Africa somewhere, and I'm going to blow this a little bit, but you'll get the intent and purpose of it. And he evangelized the people, and he evangelized the king or the ruler of this particular area. And he became a Christian, and he wanted to fulfill a certain position in the church, and they said, you can't, because you have 5 wives, and that's not allowed. And it might have been the deacon, or it was something. And the next day he came back and he says, I want to fill that position now. And he said, well, you can't. And he says, oh, sure I can. He says, I killed 4 of my wives. Oh. Yeah. I mean, you got to be careful what you do in life because, you know, and he thought that was totally normal. So anyway, I think I heard that when I was up at the Wycliffe seminar. But anyway, things like that happen. But, you know, he had 5 wives and he came to Christ, you know, whatever. Anyway, but once again, I'm not defending polygamy. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm saying that I don't see in the Bible.
Notes in here say exactly what you said.
Right. There you go. Anyway, okay, so that's enough of polygamy because who wants more than one wife anyway? Okay, I'm sorry, ladies. You're wonderful. Okay, so that's where he got his wife, and then they bore Enoch, okay? Now, if you'll notice, the name Enoch is also used in the line of Seth. Okay, just so you know, they were naming their children the same name here for a while, okay? And called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Okay, go ahead, verse 18.
I'm not reading that.
Okay, to Enoch was born Irad, and to Irad Mehujael, and Mehujael begot Methushael, and from Methushael begot Lamech. Now you're going to see the same name Lamech in Seth's line as well. Then Lamech took for himself 2 wives. The name of one was Adah, and the name of the second was Zillah. Okay, now, real carefully or real quickly, I want to tell you that every single one of these names, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, every one of these names has significance. I didn't write them down right now, but if you do a study on the names and what's happening, they all have, it's cool to do a study on names when you're in the Bible, because each one of these has significance either now or at some later point. I'm going to get this wrong, but I want you to kind of understand this. Now, we're not going to do it yet. We're going to get to the Nephilim, and when we do, I'll explain what I'm going to explain. But every name in here has a significance. Let's see here. Okay, verse 21. I'm 20. Go ahead. That's all right. Go ahead.
Go on.
Adah gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. his brother's name was Jubal. Is that correct?
Jubal, yeah.
Jubal. He was the father of all who play the harp and flute.
Keep going.
Zillah also had a son, Tubal Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Tubal Cain's sister was Naamah.
Okay, Naamah is the name that is very important somewhere in my Greek and Hebrew teacher's thinking. It points to something. Anyway, if you learn these names and you know what they mean and you apply them later, it will take care of doctrinal questions that will come up later in the Bible. Anyway, it says that Jabal was the father of those who dwell in tents and livestock, and then what's his name? Tubal Cain was an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. Okay, now just so you know, and I'm not going to give anything away other than to let you know that if you ever become a Mason, these names are really important in Masonry. Okay, I was a Mason for 20 years, and you know they use these names in part of their Masonry. But seeing as how I brought this up,
Talking about the Masons.
yeah, the Masons. Seeing as how I brought this up, Masonry is not a conspiracy to take over the world. It's not. There are believers in Masonry. Some people use Masonry as their religion. I got out of Masonry because a Christian could not believe that I was a Mason and a Christian. He says, you can't be a Christian. And he was so affected by it, I said, oh, I'll just admit and that'll be over. But I was the youngest master of a Blue Lodge in the history of the Grand Lodge of Japan. Okay? I was a 32nd degree Mason, okay, not a 33rd. 33rd degree Mason is a conferred degree. That means after a lifetime of service, they conferred on you. It doesn't mean you rule the world, okay? And anyway, Mom knows all this.
Was the master of the lodge.
Who was?
My husband.
Oh, I didn't know that. There you go. But Masonry is I'm going to write it down so you never forget this. In case you watch these stupid things on the Discovery Channel, Masonry is a fraternity, okay? They have a purpose, is to take care of each other and widows and orphans of those that have gone on. That's it, okay? Then you get what's called from the Blue Lodge, this is the Blue Lodge, from the Blue Lodge you go down into either the Scottish Rite, okay, or the York Rite. I went through the Scottish Rite to my 32nd degree, okay? This Scottish Rite has a purpose. The purpose is to take care of autistic children. That's it. That's what they donate their time and money to. The York Rite, I have no idea. I didn't go through the York Rite. I could have, but I just didn't. Okay? Once you're a 32nd degree, now this may have changed. So I went through 20 years ago, and they may have changed this. But I eventually went through what's called the Shrine. I was a Shriner. Okay? A Shriner had to be a Mason, but a Mason did not have to be a Shriner. You could stop at the Blue Lodge, the first 3 degrees, and never go through here. Okay? But I decided to go all the way through the Shrine. It's punishing. I don't recommend it to anybody because they're brutal. When you talk about college fraternities, these guys are sadistic. Okay? Anyway, Shriners have a purpose. Anybody know what the purpose of the Shrine is? Burns Hospitals for Children. That's the first purpose. There is a second purpose. To ride in parades, to look silly, and to get as drunk as possible as often as possible. That is it. That is the purpose of the Shrine right there. In American lodges, you can't have any alcohol in American lodges. But you go to Hong Kong or where was I? Hong Kong, Malaysia, Philippines, all these under the European lodge. Boy, you can drink right in the Blue Lodge. But in American lodges, no. So what did they do? They said, we need to have some fun. So they made up the Shrine. Anyway, that's where the Shrine comes from. You're right. Look as silly as possible. Drive around. They take care of Burns children. They take care of autistic children. They take care of each other. That's it. There's no worldwide conspiracy. Don't believe it. I wouldn't lie to you about this. I just wouldn't. Yes.
Well, why do they have all, I read through my father's book after he died.
Right.
Why do they have all that stuff and all these?
Codes and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
That's their
okay.
purpose.
Seeing as how we're here, I'm going to show you where it came from. We're talking about, I might as well dispel, I don't want you to fear about your dad. He may have been a Christian, I don't know. If he said he was, then you have to take it at face value. But here's what happened. There was what was called Masonry back in the Gothic period, okay? And these people, the term Freemason comes from the fact that they were free to travel anywhere in the European countries.